Hi all. Today we can deal with the poem Background Casually by Nissim Ezekiel. Background Casually by Nissim Ezekiel. Nissim Ezekiel was an Indian Jewish poet. He was also an actor, playwright, editor, and a critic too. He was awarded Sahitya Akademi Award in 1983. He was honored with the Padma Shri in 1988. He used many of the spiritual and Orientalist themes in his poetry. He was mainly dealing with many of his familial, personal events and his individual angst and his approach, his skeptical societal introspection, his approach to society, his vision about the society. He studied philosophy at Birkbeck College, London. After 3.5 years, Ezekiel worked in his way home as a deck scrubber aboard a ship carrying arms to Indochina. In the poem Background Casually, he tells about the struggle of the poet for identity in a country where he, as well as his community, that means Jews, are considered to be an alien. So he tries to showcase his struggle to live in a country like India where Jews are considered an alien. This poem is divided into 3 sections. The first section deals with the childhood of the poet, and the second section deals with the light on his adult age. Second section is about his adult age, and respectively the third section deals with the old age of the poet. So these are the 3 categories or 3 subdivisions of this poem. In first section, poet talks about his childhood experience, his thirst of identity as in his childhood, and in the second session he shows us the incidents happening in his adult age. Finally, he concludes by expressing the notions of old age of the poet. So we can go through the lines. A poet, a rascal clown was born, the frightened child who would not eat or sleep, a boy of meager born. He never learned to fly a kite, his borrowed top refused to spin. I went to Roman Catholic school, a mugging Jew among the wolves. They told me I had killed the Christ. That year I won the scripture prize. A Muslim sportsman boxed my ears. I grew in terror of the strong. But undernourished Hindu lads, their propositions always wrong, repelled me by passivity. One noisy day, I used a knife. At home on Friday nights, the prayers were said. My morals had declined. I heard of yoga and of Zen. Could one perhaps be a rabbi saint? We can get the idea of poem in a direct way, since it is a simple narration. As we have already said, this area talks about the childhood of the poet, the identity crisis he faced in his childhood. Ezekiel uses the poem in a third person for himself. So he talks about himself by mentioning as a third person. He said that he was born in a low member of the alien community. We know that the Jewish community are alien in India. People are there, places like Mumbai, Cochin, some areas are there, but they are where they are very less in population. So he was born in a member of an alien community. Here it is said that he could neither eat nor could sleep, and thus became quite weak. Being a boy, he could not eat nor or he could not sleep that much. Thus became that made him a quite weak. That may be showing the financial status of the poet when he was a poet's family when he was a child. We know that there may not be there might haven't been many nutritious food for him, and there were not proper living condition for poet because of many reason, and this poor financial status and this discrimination might have led them to be a poor family in his childhood. That's why it's mentioned that he could neither eat nor could sleep, and thus became quite weak. He was not even able to fly a kite. When other children, poets' friends, playing with the kite, he was not able to fly a kite. He was not able to spin a top in his hand, a toy used to spin top. It was used by children, not at all now, in past. So that means he was not physically fit for doing anything like a boy child. He was not able to fly a kite. He was not able to spin a top on his hand. The poet describes his childhood by using the first person. He was sent to a Roman Catholic school. In his childhood, first he was sent to a Roman Catholic school where he was considered as a prey before the wolves. So others considered the poet as a prey. So others were here mentioned as wolves. That is referring to other major communities like Hindu, Muslims, and Christians. So they were large in number, and Jewish people were very. There were only a few people in his school days. In his school, so they consider the poet as a prey before the wolves. They compared the poet to Judas, who betrayed Christ. Judas was also belonging to the community of Jew. So being a Jew, being a Jewish person, he was compared to Judas, who betrayed Jesus Christ. The same year, he won a scripture prize, depicting that he was quite good in his schooling. So that shows he was a good student. That is what the reason for getting a scripture prize. So he got he won scripture prize when he was a schoolboy. Though he was a good student, that's why he won that prize. But he was often beaten by a Muslim boy, and he was often beaten by Hindu boys. Also repelled him away with their wrong accent and use of language and terror that made in his mind during that stage. So in his childhood days, in his school days, he was not attracted by anyone. Hindu boys also repelled him away with their wrong accent and use of language, and terror reigned in his mind during that stage. So every other students of his school consider himself as an alien, and with their wrong accent they have always abused the poet, and They didn't consider himself as their classmate. He always felt discrimination from other communities in his school days. One night he heard a prayer that made him to think that he is not morally a good person. He is not a good person. So though he was discriminated by others, and some more feelings that added to that concept by himself understanding one thing, that he was not that much a good person, morally good person. He though he heard about yoga and Zen. Uh, he heard of yoga and Zen spiritual aspects, and by understanding that yoga and Zen spiritual aspect, he himself found one thing, that he was not a good person, he was not morally good. Then he thought that he could still become a rabbi. Rabbi here is a saint. So to live in India, to live in a place like India, he is not fit for that, because he is discriminated because of being an alien, because of his identity as a Jewish personality, and he was not a, what we can call, what has he said, he was not a spiritually and morally good person. So he thought to be a saint, rabbi. He thought to be a rabbi saint. This is what we can see in section 1 of the poem. All the incidents are narrated very directly in these lines, and we can see many of the symbolic aspects in the poem that is explained well in the lines itself. Now we can move on to the second section of the poem. As we have already mentioned in the beginning, the second section throws light on his adult age. The first section was dealing with the first section of the poem showcases, expresses, depicts the incidents happened in his school days as a school child, as a school boy. And when it comes to the second section, we can see the incidents that questioned his identity in his adult age, that we can see in the second section of the poem. So we can move on to the second section. 22 time to go abroad. 22 time to go abroad. First the decision, then a friend to pay the fare. Philosophy, poverty and poetry. 3 companions shared my basement room. The London seasons passed me by. I lay in bed 2 years alone. And then a woman came to tell my willing ears I was the son of man. I knew that I had failed in everything, a bitter thought. So, in an English cargo ship taking French guns and mortar shells to Indochina, scrubbed the decks and learned to laugh again at home. How to feel at home was the point. Some reading had been done, but what had I observed except my own exasperation? All Hindus are like that, my father used to say. When someone talked too loudly or knocked at the door like the devil, they hawked and spat. They sprawled around. I prepared for the worst, married, changed the jobs, and saw myself a fool. The song of my experience sung. I knew that all was yet to sing. My ancestors among the castes were aliens crushing seeds for bread. The one among them fought and taught, a major bearing British arms. He told my father sad stories of the Boer War. I dreamed that fierce men had bound my feet and hands. So second section explained many of the incidents happened in his adulthood age, his migration and his marriage and his other personal and social aspects we can see in the second session. Ezekiel talks about his adult age experience in second section. His family decided to send him to England for his higher studies, but being financially poor, the family was financially very poor. That was also mentioned in section 1. His family wished to send him to England for higher studies, but their family was being very poor. They could not find expenses. They could not meet expenses to send him abroad. And some of the friends paid for him, and he was able to go England. So with the help of his friends, he decides to go England for his higher studies. He was alone in England, and he considered poverty, poetry, and philosophy as his friends. He had 3 friends together with him. They are poverty, poetry, and philosophy. They were the only friends he had in England. Time passed, and even after 2 years, he was alone. So he passed 2 years in England. Again, he feels that loneliness in England. Finally, a woman came and tried to motivate him, and henceforth he tried to make his life a little bit better. Then he had acquaintance. He had acquaintance with a woman. That woman tried to make his life better, a little bit better. He decided to go back to India. He was too poor to do so. Then he felt that it is not suitable for a person like him in England. So he decided to go back to India. But there was no money with him to find the fare of his journey. So he decided to go back to India, but he was too poor to do so. He started working on a cargo ship. Then he started working on a cargo ship. He worked in a cargo ship to reach in India. He started working in a cargo ship that took French guns and mortar shells used for wars to India and China, Indochina, that is India and China. Got back to India on the same ship. So he got back to India on the same ship. Tried to be happy and feel at home again. So he reached in his home. He came back to India. He tried to be happy. He was still, though he tried to be happy, he himself feels a loneliness. He felt loneliness in India during this second coming too. His father often told him that all Hindus are very violent people. That is what his image about Hindus, and he had many experience that shows this, that proves this too. Then he got married. He changed his job. He acknowledged that he was a fool in all. He acknowledged he acknowledged himself as he has done many mistakes in life, and he was a fool. He started writing poetry. Law their community was ancestors did the job of crushing seeds. Or the Jewish community members were having the businesses like trading, or business like oil trading like. So his ancestors did the job of crushing seeds, crushing seeds to get oils with the help of oxen. They use to rotate, and wood grinding is grinding like a wooden grinder will be there for squeezing oil, crushing the oil. That's what his ancestors' duty, her work. He says that one of his friends told how he fought in the Boer War. He says one of his friends told how he fought in Boer War. An image of Boer War. That means many of the people asked him, many of the people said many of the heroic stories, war, involvement of war and other activities. Hearing these stories, started fearing from the Indians. So he got many of the adventurous stories about India, people of India. Everything made him to have a constant worry about Indians. This is what he tells in section 2. His youth, his adult age activities are explained in section 2. Then we can move on to the third section of the poem. Let's go through the lines. The later dreams were all of words. I did not know that words betray, but let the poems come, and lost that grip on things the worldly prize. I would not suffer that again. I look about me now and try to formulate a plainer view. The wise survive and serve to play, the fool to cash in on the inner and the outer storms. The Indian landscape sears my eyes. I have become a part of it, to be observed by foreigners. They say that I am singular. Their letters overstate the case. I have made my commitments now. This is one to stay where I am. This is one to stay where I am. As others choose to give themselves in some remote and backward place, my backward place is where I am. My backward place is where I am. Poet didn't find a grip in anything of his life. So he completes, after his youth period, he recognized, he started writing poetry when he was a young person. But finally he recognized one thing, that writing poetry is also not safe, because some words can harm a person. So writing poetry will not give the satisfaction, because some words may harm a person. He wrote poems and gave up his sufferings. He found a way to give up his sufferings. That is what he started writing poems. To write wisely without giving free play to his thoughts, expressing his inner and outer suffering that he ultimately failed to defeat. He had many of the suffering in his life, and he was not able to defeat. He was not physically, mentally, spiritually was not able to defeat his enemies in his personal life. So he opted the way of poetry. He write wisely without giving a free play to his thoughts. He expressed all the thoughts. He expressed his inner and outer suffering that he ultimately failed to defeat in his life. So the defeating of his enemies was done in his poems. He says that now he has become an integral part of India. Though he felt like an alien, as an alien in India, he finally knows one thing, or he himself believes in one thing, that he has become an integral part of India. The foreigners considered him to be an alien on that land. In India, foreigners considered him an alien, but he decided now he will consider himself as an Indian. That is the way he fights in his life to have an identity. He himself decided, he himself forced to decide one thing, that he will consider himself as an Indian. He has to stay there, thought it is a backward place for the other Jews living outside India. So he wants to live long in India as an Indian. Though India may not be felt as a safer or a safe place for Jews by other Jews living outside of India, but he decided one thing, that he will consider himself as an Indian. He will live in India. That's what his conclusion. That is why he concludes the poem. That's why he makes a conclusion. He concludes the poem. So this simple narrative poem is fully about race, the ethnicity, family background, personal and confessional, anecdotal, dramatic, ironic, poetic, and very philosophical too. You can find the poet's quest of identity, search of identity in the poem background casually. We can see love, hate, relationship, everything in this poem. Love is there, hatredness is there, and relationship too. Poet shows us many conflicts of tradition and modernism. Modernism gives a lot of space for the people like the poet, but the tradition will never admit him as an Indian. We can see the relevance of his self in the irrational and featureless world that surrounds him. The world that surrounds him as a world without rational thoughts, that is very irrational. That is why the world consider minority as aliens. So, and we can also see alienation. Alienation is one of the important themes of the poem. So this is what we can see in the poem background casually by Nissim Ezekiel. Thank you.